Hello and welcome to a special edition of Here's a Pitch. Quick one here today. I figured we'd do some more Howard Stern stuff. It sounds like more people want to come on and be part of the show, so that's what we're going to do. But first, a best of. How about when did people find out about being in the Jackie chair and talk about their experiences? Let's take a look.
So the first time I really ever heard of you was when you started sitting in for Jackie. Jackie leaves the Stern show, and you become the first man to ever sit in the Jackie chair after Jackie leaves. How did that come about? Were you scheduled? Because Jackie left like the week before. You come up, and now it's like, oh, Ron Zimmerman's going to be the next Jackie? Can you tell me how all of that came together back then?
Sure. Well, Howard and Jackie and Robin had if you remember the show, Jackie at a certain point, like, wasn't really like the funny guy. He was more like the Fredo of the show where him and Robin were always fighting, and seriously, they hated each other. And so they were always fighting, and then Jackie, this was when the E channel show was on, and Jackie felt like he deserved a cut of that, and there was all this bullshit. And Howard, who I had met when I was 17 at a comedy club in D.C., and then I stayed friends with him, and he moved to New York, and then I moved to New York, and we kept in touch, and we're pretty good friends for many years. And so then Jackie quit, and Howard calls me and says, Jackie quit. I was wondering if you're not doing anything, would you come to New York and just sit in his chair? And if you feel like writing jokes, write some jokes. If you want to talk, do whatever you want. But I just need somebody in that chair, or I'm just not comfortable, And so I said, okay, and paying me, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks or something. I said to Howard, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm really not. And part of it was they'd have staff meetings after the shows, and I'd say, and I told him, Howard, this doesn't work having me here because I agree with you about everything. We're in sync about pretty much everything. And so that doesn't work because you have like a family of characters here. And I'm not really part of that. And I'm not going to be because I agree with you on everything. And that's what Robin's supposed to do. And you need somebody in this chair that doesn't agree with everything.
What was it like the first time you got called in there? I don't feel like you get real worked up for what I can tell, but it had to be kind of cool. How did that happen? Does Gary call you? Just give me that first trip into the Howard Stern show, because that does, when a stand-up comedian walks in there, they can walk out and then start selling out shows for 6 months, a year, 5 years.
It was unbelievable. I remember it was July 18, 2001. I still remember that date like it's someone's birthday or a death date. No, I was always a big fan. Like, I worked construction. I was a landscaper. So I'd always, especially I lived in New Jersey, so he was big in New York. So that's all I did was listen to Howard Stern constantly. So I was a huge fan of the show. I started doing comedy, and I put out these prank call CDs, and I mailed it into the show, and they started playing it on the air. And, they're like, oh, we got to have this guy in. He's really funny. And then they go, oh, okay, you're booked. You got to sit in for a whole day on this day in July. And, if you know the show, when they, jump in and jump out. I'm like, all right, great. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I remember being in the green room like 10 to 6. The show starts at 6 a.m. And I'm just standing there. And I see Howard walk by. I see Robin. I see Fred. I see everybody. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I'm here. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I've been fans of these people forever. I go, all right, I can't mess it up. I go, I got one shot. I go, so just pretend like they're just your friends. I go, the show, so just bust balls. That's the show. You know, I remember like the first like 3 minutes, Howard's like, hey, nice to meet you, whatever. Jim's going to sit in the show. And he's went right in there telling a story about him and Beth, his wife, on the beach. And they found like a bird or something like that. And they saved the bird. And he had a tear in his eye. And I go, Howard, I go, you should really check your pants for penis. And he just, I knew it to throw it out. And he just lost it. And I was like, God, I got my first laugh. That was like 5 minutes into the show.
So this is obviously Jackie had just left, and this is that point where they were sort of auditioning for that chair. Were you auditioning, or were you just sitting in? Because we know Artie gets it at the end of the year, but I know Craig Gass was in there, Ron Zimmerman, Fitzsimmons, I believe. They just kind of brought in a bunch of guys. I don't know if they were. Did you feel like you were auditioning, or was it just, hey, just sit in? And how did they explain it to you?
No, it wasn't an audition. They just said, look, we're going to have different guys, a rotating guest to sit in. We're going to rotate you guys. We're going to pick like 8 or 10 guys. And I'm like, okay, so we didn't even know it was an audition.
You're very famous on the Stern Show because I think it started. I mean, did you audition for Jackie's chair, or were you just sort of coming in? Because there was a time where comedians were coming in, but some people called them auditions. Some people just said, no, I'm just sitting in. Were you auditioning? Did you have a thought that you might be able to sit there, or were you just coming in going, I'm having fun being on the show?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both, because I came in and I had won this. HBO had this comedy festival in Aspen every year, and I won some trophy, and so I kind of got on their radar, so they brought me in to do an episode, and obviously I was nervous as hell, and I didn't know what to expect, and I did it, and it went really well, and so Howard started bringing me in on a regular basis. Like I would come in like sometimes 3 days a week and sometimes once a month. And it went on for a while. And then when Jackie left, they kind of started rotating more. They called it the Jackie chair. And they started bringing more and more people in, you know, guys like Jeff Ross and Artie Lange, Doug Stanhope, Dave Attell. And they started kind of looking at us. Nobody ever said this is an audition, but the press started covering it that way, like who's going to get it. And it got whittled down to like 6 of us, and then like 3 of us. And then eventually it was just me and Artie. It was like me against Artie. And there was no comparison. I mean, Artie was the guy for that show. I'm a fucking married guy with 2 young kids who's sober. And, you know, Artie's coming in on Monday morning talking about how he had a 3-way with hookers in Vegas and stole his money, and he's hungover. And, you know, he's a master storyteller. And he was so great for that show for so long. But then when he got that, Howard said to me, you're welcome on the show anytime you want to come on. And he was true to it. I went on like 50 times. Every time I was in New York, I would just email, why am I forgetting his name?
Baba Booey. Yeah.
I would email Baba Booey, and they'd have me in every single time. It was very nice. It was very welcoming.
Did you think it was an audition, or was it just to come in, do your thing, and how did it go?
Well, it starts in 1995. I think, I don't know when that Private Parts book came out. I never listened to Howard, but I got his book for Christmas. And I don't know if that was like, I want to say that was like Christmas of 93 or 94. I read the book and I just laughed my ass off. And it was the weirdest thing. I just thought, I'm totally going to work with this guy. I'm totally working with this guy. And I knew in my mind that I would end up working with him somehow. And so I was working at a radio station in Seattle at the time. I had moved up. I'm from New York originally, but I moved up to Seattle to start doing stand-up, and I started doing radio. I was working with a legend in the radio industry named Bob Rivers, who he has these song parodies called Twisted Tunes that actually charted on the Billboard charts. It was really super popular song parodies. And I put together a tape of all these voices that I did, and I overnighted it to the Howard Stern Show, and I think I labeled the tape Satan. And then I put in a little note like, hey, Gary, this tape will scare the shit out of you. The next day, someone at the radio station, a receptionist, said, hey, you have a phone call from Gary dell'Abate. He wants you to call him. And I was like, that's it. And I went out and got hammered for like a week I just went out and got shit-faced and just celebrated like, oh, it's going to be great news. And then a week later, the receptionist said, hey, Gary dell'Abate called and said, can you please call when you have time? And I was like, oh, fuck. That's right. So I called him up, and Gary said, hey, so I got your tape, and man, you know, all the voices, like who's doing all the voices on the tape? And I said, well, that's me. That's me doing everything on there. And he said, so is that you doing the Sam Kinison? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you're Sam Kinison. Like, we knew Sam better than anybody, and we thought it was him, man. That's how fucking good it was. And I was like, well, I'd love to work with you guys someday. And he said, well, actually, we have an idea. And I started doing some stuff on the Stern Show, and it was this really fucking, like, hardcore. Every time an asshole died, like someone we could all agree is an asshole, like Jeffrey Dahmer. When someone like Jeffrey Dahmer died, I would call in the next day as Sam Kinison calling live from the gates of hell with a dead guy. And it would just be, hey guys, it's Sam Kinison. I'm down here in hell, and I got Jeffrey Dahmer down here, and he's looking at my ass like it's a TiVo. Oh! And it was just dark. It was so fucking dark. And then over the years, I remember I would call in as different celebrities. No, actually, first I started writing, and I asked, because Jackie would write all my material, and Jackie's material coming through Sam's voice sounded like Jackie's jokes through Sam's voice. And I remember saying, like, hey, I feel like this isn't authentic to Sam. I feel like Sam would have a different approach to these thoughts and these ideas. And Gary said, well, send me something. We'll take a look at it, man. And I sent him a script. And they're like, oh, this is good. You know what? You should start writing for the show. And so I started writing my own scripts. And at that point, I'm thinking, fuck, I should probably go back to New York. And so there was a comedian that I worked with a lot out in Seattle who was living in New York named Mitch Hedberg. And I asked Mitch, like, hey, Mitch, would it be cool if I need to be out in New York? You know, is it okay if I stay with you for a little bit until I get on my feet? And he was like, hell yeah, man, you can stay as long as you want. And I moved in with Mitch, and I started writing for Howard. I started writing for Weekend Update. And then I just started going into some weird fucking directions because I felt so much love from Howard for what I was doing that I was like, hey, Dennis Miller has this Monday Night Football gig. Like, wouldn't it be funny to have Dennis Miller come on and talk about and just not make any sense at all? Because Dennis has such a vernacular that's so over our heads. You know, all of his jokes of the, man, this crown's harder to get off than, you know, oh, fuck, what was that one? Martha Stewart on a bed of dirty sheets. I mean, for Christ's sake. Like, so I started writing character stuff for that, and then I started doing weird shit. Al Pacino had twins, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be funny if one of the babies was a regular on the show? And nobody seemed to understand it except for Howard. I went where he'd go, Al Pacino just had twins, and we have one of the babies on the show. So you're Al Pacino's baby. What do you like to do for fun?
What do I like to do for fun? I like to pee. You like to pee? I love to pee. My mother, Beverly D'Angelo, whenever she changes my diapers, I give her a quick squirt right in the fucking face. Hoo-ah! And she likes it because she's a whore.
It was terrible. Everything was like really out there. And then all of a sudden, one day in March of 2001, I wake up and I'm hearing on the show that they're giving Jackie a hard time because every time Jackie's contract would come up, it would be a real drawn out thing. And they were having a tough time because Jackie's style of negotiation, from what they would say on the show, was he would just say, it's all what I want. I will not compromise. And Howard told him at the end of his last contract, he's like, if you do this again, we're not going to stick around. Like you have to find some middle ground. You can't do it all your own way. And then his contract was coming up, and Howard reminded him, dude, please work with the station. And I woke up one morning, I had 3 messages on my voicemail. The first message was, dude, Howard Stern is looking for new people. You got to call him up. Boop. Hey, dude, I don't know if you heard, man. Howard Stern says he's going to audition new comics because Jackie's off the show. Boop. Hey, Craig, it's Gary dell'abate. Call me as soon as you get this. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I called him up and I go, hey, Gary, what's going on? He goes, hey, how are you? And I was like, he's never asked me how I am. I'm doing great. I heard Jackie quit the show. Yes, he did. And I said, is that what this is about? And he said, yes, it is. And I was like, what do you want to do? And he said, we just want you to come in for 2 days, just see what happens, just have some fucking fun. And then I came in, and that's all I wanted, man. I wanted 2 days, just come in and have fun. And something happened in that first 2 days that was like, I didn't realize how large it was. All I ever want to do when I'm in a studio with somebody is I just want to make everyone in this room laugh. And you don't think about people listening. And in that show, I mean, I was getting text messages all the time from all over the country. And then I started getting offered acting roles, and then, got, just based on stuff I would say on the show. I got offered acting roles in Sex and the City, and later on King of Queens, and things just started happening from there. But the audition was supposed to be a 2-day audition. It turned into 2 days a week, every week for the next 10 months or so. And then by the time we got to that end of that run, I was in 2 days a week, and then they would bring in Florentine and Kimmel and Richard Jenny, Adam Carolla, Jeff Ross. Then they started bringing Artie in. Then Artie started doing 2 days a week. And then that middle day on Wednesday, they would start rotating. But it was just me and Artie doing 2 days a week every week. And then they finally gave the job to Artie. And then I started getting work. So it launched my career. That's a long fucking answer.
Do you ever think about what would have happened if maybe, let's say, Artie has some sort of weird meltdown during this audition, and then you get the job, and what that would have? Do you ever think about that? Like, what it would have been like to wake up every morning and be on that show, or is it, hey, this worked out? People know who I am now from that show, and everything worked out anyway without having to be on it.
Well, being on it takes you to a whole other level. I mean, it's really got a very strong cult following. And I don't know, I think it would have overshadowed, like, Artie is always going to be known as the guy from the Howard Stern show. And I think I've kind of crawled my way to the middle of this business. And I've been doing it for 30 years, just kind of existing in this really nice space where I make a good living. I get to do what I want creatively, and I'm not at anyone's behest. I'm not anyone's guy. And so I've managed to always have some kind of project going on that keeps me out there a little bit, to be able to draw at the comedy clubs. But I think it would have been tough to do that job. I mean, it's a fucking grind. You got to get up early in the morning, and you got to be on. And, I'm sure there's office politics that I was never a part of because I was just in and out as a guest. So I think I was relieved when I didn't get it, but it certainly would have been a huge boost to my career.
The way you mentioned that, now that I think about it, it's amazing Artie pulled off 9 years, right? I mean,
was it 9 years? Wow.
Yeah, well, 2002 to 2009. My math might be maybe 8.5. But either way, the fact that he really did show up at least the first 6 years pretty much all the time, and then kind of spiraled.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, he's a workman. I mean, he comes from blue-collar stock, so he's like a guy that shows up for work. He may be on heroin, but he shows up. And again, like I that show really needed him at that time because everybody was getting older and everybody used to go to strip clubs. Like everybody on the Stern show used to live a wild life, and they all got a little bit suburban. And then I think Artie came in and he was this breath of fresh air.
What do you, have any contact with Artie at all? I ask everyone who joins me here.
Sure. Yeah. I talked to Artie.
How is he?
He's hanging in there. He's sober. He's staying busy. He's starting to go out and do stand-up again.
He is. Well, now, can you tell us a little bit about where would we see him? He's not promoting this.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Is he now? Is he? But he's healthy because there's this like, oh, where did he go? He's this one little tweet and then he's gone. He was doing a podcast and we lost him. So you're saying he's healthy. You're keeping in touch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a reporter. I have no idea. You know, I think he's doing fine.
Is it like? I mean, when they call you and tell you you're not going to do this anymore, how was it devastating, or were you like, oh, great time?
I was kind of exhausted because I didn't know until the end of Tuesday every week that I was coming back next Monday and Tuesday. So, and I was doing drugs back then too. So like, you know, it started to become a mind fuck of like, I don't know where this is going. It was supposed to be a 2-day audition and it's going on all year long. And I didn't know where the light at the end of the tunnel was. So once I got word, hey, this is over, where we decided to go with Artie, it was like, all right, cool. And it's funny because I would see Artie sometimes at auditions, and I genuinely got the feeling that Artie carried some kind of guilt because of the way he would talk to me. He would always go, hey, I don't know if you heard, do you hear the show today? And I'd say no. And apparently a caller called in and said, hey, Artie, I love you. And he'd go, oh, thanks, buddy. And they'd go, yeah, but Craig Gass is better. And did you hear that? And I was like, no, I didn't. That's funny. And it really was funny to me that he would point that out to me. Like, hey, man, fans love you. And he was always incredibly sweet to me, you know, so.
But not depressing at all to think that could have been you for the next 10 years. I mean, does that, or is it, that's the way show business is, right? I mean,
no, I mean, there's nothing depressing. I mean, I've been paying my bills and my mom's bills for 20 years. Like there's no downside to, like, if you say there's a downside, it's like, well, you could have had this much more money, but I never finished high school, and I went to high school for a long time, you know, and I still don't have my diploma. And so everything turned out so much better than I expected. And I continue to get work, and I'm starting to do stuff with Howard again.
So you mentioned Artie, and Artie takes that spot, and he runs with it for a good 9 years, and it was hilarious radio. I always say there's this double era. Jackie era was awesome. That's how I kind of learned about the show. The Artie era made me a super fan. I mean, I just thought Artie was so great. Did you listen back then? Did you find Artie funny? And have you talked to Artie in a while? How is Artie? Everyone wants to know.
All the time. Oh, and dude, that is like, I went down this rabbit hole of like watching videos of like, here's the pitch, and I'm like, I haven't heard a single pitch. And then there's all these Artie update videos, and none of them have an update. It's like, here's Scott the engineer, here's so-and-so, and here's so-and-so with an Artie update. It's like, what's the update? I don't know.
It's kind of my running gag, yes.
But I listen all the time. I have a Sirius radio. They gave me a free subscription, so I listen all the time. And all the Artie years were amazing. I mean, it's like I was more familiar with that than I was the Jackie era, because even when I was in Seattle calling in from 95 to 98, I wasn't listening. I still wasn't listening to the show. I still had never heard the Howard Stern show. And but yeah, when I get out to New York, and then I started listening, and then I became part of the show, and then I go through that whole experience of being in there, and it was crazy.
You don't keep in touch with Artie. No one does, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the Artie update, is that no one has one, except Nick DiPaolo had him. Was that you calling in to Nick DiPaolo's show, or who the hell was that? He had Artie in November, and it was like, is that Artie? I don't think that is.
Artie's doing great. He's actually teaching kickboxing now. No.
I'm a yoga instructor. I do 9 to 5. I do a lot of, downward dog.
I feel like we have to satisfy the clickbait and tell everybody that he's doing great. But yeah, man, we actually did shows right before COVID hit. We did a few shows together, and he's lost a bunch of weight, and he's healthier and happier, and he's doing good. I haven't talked to him in probably. I feel like I want to have an update for you to be able to say, "Oh, dude, he's yeah, man, he's doing a spin class. He's fucking awesome." But yeah, he's doing good.
Let's just go with he's going.
I haven't had him on the phone for a few months, but he's doing good.
Okay, that's good. So we just want to hear he's doing good. He went just dark. Like Artie doesn't go dark. You know, he was going to do this podcast. And he was going to read stories, and then gone. I hope he's okay. What about that time you guys did Carnegie Hall and you opened for him, right? Was that one of your bigger times to be on stage and just, I mean, probably like a rock and roll show, right? Because Artie comes and it's not just comedy. It's hey man, let's go. I mean, was that one of the bigger shows for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the audience, you know, look, as Stern's gotten older, the audience has gotten older. So it's not really that circus environment anymore at those live shows. They're like, you know, they're middle-aged guys from Long Island that drove in, and I think they respected that it was Carnegie Hall. I think everybody sort of felt like, wow, this is a big deal, you know. And but I remember Howard walked in. I can't remember whose set it was during it. Might have been mine, but he walked in while the show was going on, and obviously everyone just stopped and turned, and him and Beth walked down the aisle. And everybody cheered, and he sat down, and then it couldn't have been Art. Maybe it was me. I can't remember, but it was a pretty special night. Having been somebody that grew up in New York and, you know, went to Carnegie Hall a million times in my life, and you know, all the famous albums that have come out of there, from, you know, Lenny Bruce to George Carlin and Bob Newhart. You know, to be on that stage was pretty. Even though I wasn't the headliner, it still felt pretty special.
But I guess at some point they go, we like Artie's the best for this job, so let's hire him, which is fine. I mean, he was great for the job. I mean, he, you know, I wasn't jealous or anything. Like when he got the job, like, okay, that's fine. I was still going on the show all the time, so it didn't really make a difference.
He was so good on there, especially early on. I just remember he would have things that he would say that Howard didn't even catch, but they were so funny to me, and it added. There's always that little arc of the show, and I started listening way back in the early 90s, so it was Jackie and that group with Billy West, and then it changed over to basically Artie, Stuttering John, and KC, and I felt like, I don't know, for some reason I felt like that was the prime. I know that a lot of older fans would be like, oh no, the Jackie years. I guess there's these people that kind of compare and contrast. Do you have a favorite era of those shows?
I like the Jackie shows, Jackie, Billy West. I listen to those on YouTube. It's unbelievable the things they were saying and what they were getting away with. And I liked how they danced around the dirty language, the cursing and stuff like that, and made up words and danced around it, and how it was just out of control then. The Artie years were great. They were different. You know, Artie was more of like a sidekick. Yeah. Talking, you know, Jackie wasn't, but those years were great too with the art. You know, Howard was also going through a lot with the FCC at the time. When I went on the show, 2001, you know, he left for Sirius 2006. The FCC was on his case. Remember the Janet Jackson thing, and then his Clear Channel took him off like 10 stations because he wouldn't listen to their new rules and all that stuff. So he was going through a lot of crap where he was handcuffed. So when he got to Sirius, he just let loose again too. But look, all those years were great. But I like the Jackie years better for some reason. I watch the old Channel 9 shows on YouTube, which are great.
You're just making me think about it though, and all you'd have to hear was even Fred just playing a hee, and that would make me laugh for just on something stupid.
Jackie's laugh after all those terrible stories and stuff. And then whenever they would attack, I mean, Howard was so vicious when he would attack Gary or Jackie or Fred during those fights, or Stuttering John. In the 90s, it was brutal. I love listening to that. It's just a beatdown.
Yeah, it was almost painful, but still glad that you weren't being part of it.
I used to tell Gary to, talk after me. I will.
And they had tried out a few people earlier, and then Artie Lange had been a guest, and I think Gary and me both said, "What about Artie Lange?" And Howard was sort of, I don't know. It was like, come on, he's a drunk, he's crazy, he's everything you want, loves sports, you hate sports, all that shit, just like Jackie. So he hired Artie, and I thankfully went home as fast as I could.
Well, I remember early. I think you brought in some Miller Lite like the first day, right? Tom confiscated your beer.
No, what it was because it was so fucking early. I could never just wake up. You had to be there at 6 a.m. and so I used to stop and get a bottle of orange juice and a fifth of vodka, and I'd dump out half the orange juice and then pour vodka in the bottle and then take it in, and it was like, that's just my morning orange juice. I don't want anybody. So it did actually lighten me up a little bit and stuff, but then one day, I think it might even be the first week, the runner comes in and he's like, I'm taking breakfast orders. Okay, here's my order. Come here. I'm like, go buy a bottle of orange juice and a fifth of vodka. And I gave him money, and I was like, and then have it and bring it back. Okay. Never occurring to me that the station manager looked at everything, and the kid was so scared of his job that he told the station manager. So we're sitting there doing the show, and the station manager comes in. Yeah, I guess his name was Tom, and he says, "Hey Howard, I want to talk to you about your big shot friend from Hollywood." And he's like, "What?" And he goes, "He's drunk." and this is on the air. And Howard goes, "No, he's not. Get out of here. Tom, go away. You're a pain in the ass." And he goes, "You don't think he's drunk?" And he reaches over and grabs my orange juice before I can grab it back. And then he hands it to Howard. He goes, "Take a little sip of that." Howard takes a sip, who doesn't drink at all. And he's like, "Oh my God, he is drunk." And he's like, "Ron, you can't do this. That's against the FCC thing. I'm going to get a fine, And I was like, "Well, nobody told me." And then this Tom guy was like, "Oh no, he's got to go." And Howard, "No, he's just not going to drink anymore on the show." And I didn't, but it was like that day. I don't know how people know what you look like from being on that show, but I was walking to the park, and more than a few people stopped and went, "Hey, you're Howard's friend, the drunk, right?" Like, I guess so. Even when I came back home, people were going, "Oh, you were great on the Stern show, especially when you were drunk."
Well, I remember when I first heard you, and I said, "This is definitely a different dynamic than Jackie's laugh." You were very dry and, well, now drunk, I learned. Tell me, so we talked beforehand, you guys aren't real tight anymore, you and Howard, right? Did something happen with the writing of Kane, or what happened to kind of end that relationship?
Oh, no. Although that always has bothered me, but I should have never sold him that script. That was a stupid mistake. But at the time, it seemed like he could get it made. I didn't realize that he would go after Les Moonves with such a passion, and that Les Moonves had been promoted to the head of pretty much everything that was CBS, which included Howard's station. And it was like, somehow I felt like Howard didn't even realize that or something, but yeah, he had this pilot, and then one day, Howard he's not a producer. He just didn't know what to do, and instead just yelled. He goes on the show, and it's like, Les Moonves, I gave you the best script you've ever seen in your life, and you're too much of a pussy to shoot it, and it was just awful. And Les Moonves, of course, cut it. My script was so dead that when Howard went after him on the radio, it just killed my script.
Well, did that ruin your guys' relationship at that point, or was there something that came along after?
No, that wasn't it. Actually, I don't. Things happen, so I've learned. I wasn't going to blame him. Stuff. It was just one of those unfortunates. And no, it wasn't until recently that Howard and I stopped speaking or communicating, I guess. For years, I would email him every so often, and how's Beth? How are you? How's your dogs? What's going on? And he'd write back. Usually not much. Dogs are fine, Beth's fine, and that was about it. But I wrote him. Do you remember when he was on the Bill Maher show?
Yeah.
Not all that long ago. And those two never got along, and I told both of them a million times, if you ever just sat and talked, you would like each other because you're very much the same. Neither one was. But then Howard went on his show and gave what I thought was just a wonderful interview. And, about his therapy and how it's really turned him around and all this stuff. I thought it was just great. So I wrote him a letter, an email, and said, wow, I just thought you were fantastic with Bill, and, and so open and honest about your therapy, and, congratulations, and you just sound terrific. I'm very happy for you. And, and then the usual, how's Beth? How's the dogs? But it was kind of a beautiful letter, And he writes me back, thanks, Ron. I'm a work in progress. Period. Okay, so now I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking about all the times I've written him, how are you? What's going on? And gotten these one-sentence responses for the last few years. And so I wrote him back, and I said, Howard, you know what would be another great step in the right direction? I said, if you learn to type 3 words that would take you 2 seconds and make me feel good. And those words are, how are you? And that's what I wrote him. And then I didn't hear back for a long time. And then I thought, let me see if he even got this. So I start to write him another email. I send it, and it says blocked. Blocked. And I have like 4 different emails for him. Blocked all of them. And I just thought, what a little baby. You know, what a fucking little baby. You know, it's like the most easiest thing in the world to ask somebody. And certainly just manners, you know, just manners. I don't care how rich you are. It's like, Howard, I know people richer than you. Okay, I've been with people richer than you, you know. I spent 5 years sleeping with somebody richer than you. So, you know, who the fuck are you? You know, it's like Al Pacino calls me back and asks how I am. You know, fuck you. I didn't write all that. I didn't respond at all. Obviously, I couldn't anyway. But that's how I feel, which is just fuck you, Howard. You know, you've been rich and famous too goddamn long, and you forgot who your real friends are. So, the hell.
Yeah, well, I thought he was in therapy. I thought he was fixing himself, but this is not. This is not seemingly the signs of someone who's right-minded.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's like he may be doing good with some of his stuff, some of his issues, but he certainly hasn't. You know, gotten to the point where he gives a shit about anybody else, and that's terrible. You know, when Jackie left the show, I used to walk around the park with him. He's one of my best friends, and I, you know, he was like, I don't know what to do, and you know, what now, and all this shit. I said, Jackie, I guarantee you, come with me tomorrow morning into the studio, sit down in your chair, and start working. And just go with the old Hollywood saying, it never happened. You know, it never happened. You never quit. You haven't been gone. I just happened to be in town, and that was fun. But I said, just go back to work. He will let you. You know, he wants you to go back to work. He just wants you to swallow a little pride. Okay, you can do that. You're man enough. And just go back to work. It never happened. And he almost did it. I had him so close. And then he didn't. And that was really disappointing, you know, because I wanted to save the day, you know, and I wanted to get Jackie back on there because I thought it was silly that he wasn't. And you know, but he wouldn't do it. Too prideful.
Jackie seems happy now, though. He comes on this podcast a lot, and we tell stories and laugh and tell jokes, so I think he's doing well. You guys have been friends for a long time, too, right? So you know the joke, man. You mentioned a relationship.